the same star that ancient Persian astrologers called one of the four royal stars, a star associated for millennia with the rise and fall of power, is about to light up the sky again. In 13 days, the sun and moon meet directly in its sign for a total solar eclipse. The last time this happened, in 2017, the shadow crossed the entire continental United States, and the event got its own nickname. Most people won't notice anything happening today, but the countdown to that eclipse quietly started the moment yesterday's full moon peaked, and today is day 1. The moon continues waning through Aquarius today, carrying the emotional charge of yesterday's full moon into its release phase. It stays in this sign until the early hours of July 31st, when it finally moves into Pisces. The sun continues through Leo, still close to Jupiter, though the two are now separating from yesterday's exact cazimi. Mercury moves steadily through Cancer, still in its post-retrograde shadow period until August 6th, meaning communication is clearing, but not fully back to full speed. Venus continues through Virgo, Mars through Gemini, and Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto all remain retrograde in Aries, and Aquarius, respectively, the same 3 retrograde backdrop that's been running all week. Here's the thing about eclipses: they don't announce themselves with a single dramatic date. Traditionally, their influence opens roughly 2 weeks before the exact event and lingers up to 6 months after. That means today, quietly, without fanfare, marks the start of the run-up to the next total solar eclipse, August 12th. At 20 degrees Leo, the very same sign the sun has been sitting in all week. We've seen a Leo total solar eclipse before, and it was one of the most watched astronomical events of the last generation. On August 21st, 2017, a total solar eclipse crossed the entire continental United States for the first time in nearly a century, nicknamed the Great American Eclipse. That eclipse sat at 29 degrees Leo, conjunct the fixed star Regulus. Historically known as one of the 4 royal stars of ancient Persia, and associated for millennia with leadership, ambition, and the rise and fall of those in power. This year's version isn't a repeat of that exact placement, but it is the same sign, the same underlying theme: Leo, identity, who gets to lead, who gets seen, arriving again 9 years later. And this time, it's not landing on a settled, familiar axis. The lunar nodes only shifted onto this exact Leo-Aquarius line 4 days ago, on July 26th, meaning the upcoming eclipse will be the very first eclipse this fresh 8-year cycle produces, arriving while the shift is still new enough that most people haven't consciously registered it yet. Today, sitting exactly between yesterday's full moon and that eclipse 2 weeks out, is less an event of its own and more a hinge point, the day the sky quietly turns the page from peak to unfolding. Forget the labels for a second. Here's what today does to an actual person in plain terms. The waning moon in Aquarius is a sorting mechanism. Yesterday's full moon likely stirred something up: an insight, an emotion, a realization. Today isn't for having more revelations. It's for sorting through the ones you already got. What to do. Instead of chasing a new insight today, revisit yesterday's and ask what's actually useful from it, and what was just noise from the intensity of the moment. Being newly inside an eclipse window is a low hum, not a loud signal. You likely won't feel today as dramatic. What you might feel, without quite placing why, is a faint sense that something is quietly starting to shift underneath the surface of your plans, the kind of feeling you only recognize in hindsight. What to do? Pay attention to any decision that suddenly feels more urgent than it did a few days ago. That urgency might be real information, not impatience. Mercury's post-retrograde shadow is a check before you commit signal. Communication is clearing, but not fully. A miscommunication from the retrograde period could still resurface for a final correction before August 6th. What to do if an old conversation or agreement comes back up in the next week? Treat it as unfinished business worth closing properly, not a step backward. There's also a simple physical layer to today worth naming. Waning moon phases have long been associated with lower energy and slower recovery, which is part of why today may feel more tiring than yesterday, even without an obvious reason. If you're someone who runs on adrenaline during big emotional peaks, the come down afterward can hit harder than the peak itself did. What to do? Treat today as a legitimate rest day rather than a failure to keep momentum going. You are not behind. You are recovering on schedule. There's also a relational layer worth naming, since Venus and Mars just went through their exact square yesterday. The friction between wanting closeness and wanting independence hasn't fully resolved just because the exact aspect has passed. What to do? If a conversation with someone close to you feels slightly off today, resist the urge to over-explain or over-apologize. Give it a day or two to settle before deciding it means anything more than ordinary friction easing out of a system. And there's a quieter opportunity hidden inside all this stillness. Days that feel uneventful are often the best days for small, unglamorous progress, the kind of task you'd normally push aside for something more exciting. What to do? Pick one small, practical thing you've been putting off, and use today's lower-key energy to simply get it done, without needing it to feel meaningful while you're doing it. Put together, the human experience of today is this: you're processing yesterday's intensity rather than generating something new, sensing a distant, still-forming shift you can't fully name yet, and quietly wrapping up loose threads from the last few weeks before a bigger chapter opens in less than 2 weeks. Your body is likely asking for less than your mind expects of it, and that gap between the two is worth listening to rather than pushing through. Something in a close relationship may feel slightly unsettled without a clear reason, and that's not a problem to solve today. It's residue still settling from yesterday's friction, and it will finish settling on its own. If a small practical task gets done today, it will probably feel disproportionately satisfying, simply because it's real progress on a day that otherwise asks for very little. Most people will just feel today as calm, maybe even a little uneventful compared to yesterday, and won't think to connect that calm to anything astrological at all. That calm is real, but it's the specific calm of a hinge quietly turning, not the calm of nothing happening at all. Somewhere underneath the ordinary rhythm of the day, the next 2 weeks are already being written, one quiet hour at a time, long before the headline event on August 12th makes it obvious to everyone else. Every big story has a quiet page between its climax and its next act. Today is that page, nothing loud, everything moving. In less than 2 weeks, the sky writes its next headline in the same sign it just spent all week lighting up. Come back August 12th, a total solar eclipse in Leo is landing on a brand new nodal axis for the first time in almost 20 years. I'll break down exactly what to expect,